don't let the world take your hobbies from you, right? Don't let the world take your hobbies from you. Those interests, those obscure things that we're into, they make you unique, man. I'd rather risk failing as myself than being successful as anyone else.
Tell me who's missing.
I know who's missing. I am Dometi Pongo. Dometi means the backbone of the family, and my last name literally means workhorse.
Dometi Pongo is a great hang, and you're going to want to be friends with him after you listen to this episode. He is passionate and committed to the intersection of, get this, pop culture, which we all have an affinity for in some way, shape, or form, and social justice, and how those two may not seem to intersect so explicitly, but he does it. And in our conversation today, you'll hear more about why he is incredibly committed to journalistic integrity and staying authentic in a world that can sometimes feel inauthentic, that of red carpets and entertainment and celebrity. You are going to love this conversation. It's going to get you hyped up for whatever is next. And how about this for a personal mantra? This is Dometi's. Bring everything you are to everything you do. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hi, Dometi.
Hey Emily, how you doing?
I am so good. I was telling Todd before we got on, I feel like, and this, I don't know if you have people in your life that point this out to you, but I am a spring person.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, my friends are like, this is what you do every time of year. Meaning, I told Todd this yesterday, I'm like fired up. Like there's things that come into my purview, and I'm like, ooh, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to do that. And instead of, being sort of judgmental about it, I'm like, that's what I do. Okay. What is it? Do you have any patterns like that you notice about yourself?
It's so interesting you say that because I think it's so cool to forgive yourself for your idiosyncrasies and just lean into them. I am a night person, right? Like ideas come to me for whatever reason between the hours of 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. That
Mhm.
is my time.
Mhm.
And I've tried to wake up early. I've tried to force myself. As Todd knows, I worked in morning radio. I tried to figure out how to get my brain working at
Oh
that time.
god.
And that is just not where I'm optimal. And so, same, like the evening is where, so any of those tasks that are muscle memory, that is
Yeah.
all my daytime stuff. But
Yeah.
the creative ideas, the things that require me to really roll up my sleeves, I'm a night guy. So yeah, that's my spring.
I was gonna ask you, like, how was your morning? I don't even wanna know that now. How was your night last night?
What a beautiful question. No one's ever asked me. It was wonderful. Caught up on a lot of work, and I've been trying to find this balance between, relationship and family and showing up for all of the people in my life because, in the world we live in, especially in the Western world, we put so much emphasis on our productivity, our output, money, all these different things. And so you'll look up and you realize that you haven't called those people that you love in a couple of weeks, and you haven't talked to the people you really care about in a while. So I kind of did a twofer. So my girlfriend's from Queens. I'm based in New York. We went to a hookah spot, and I had my laptop, and we were out until like midnight or 1 a.m. And I was sending emails and at the same time spending time with a loved one. So it was nice.
She's also a night owl, or do you have balance? Is she a morning dove?
We're working through it, Emily. We're working
I
through
know.
it.
Look, I was up at 6 this morning, okay? Happy as a clam. The sun's up, I'm up, okay? Arnie, my boyfriend, the first thing I asked him when I came up to, like, get ready today was like, "So how late did you stay up last night?" He's like, "I don't know, midnight," you know? And I think part of the process in our relationship has been like, "No shame." Like, that's his time. And he's a creator and a creative as well, and so I love that for you. It is a wild time in the world. I think we could say that every day. I'd love to check in with you knowing who you are And we'll get into a little bit of who you are. You know, an activist, a fashion icon, a journalist, a son, a boyfriend. But just like, what is your take given all of that, right? And what I think what carries through for me and all those identifiers is like you are engaged. Um, Culturally, what's popping for you? Like, what are you thinking about
Right.
right now? Because I would be like, we could talk about Kendrick and Drake, or we could talk about Gaza, we can talk about Chicago. We could like, I just get the sense you're thinking about all of it,
All the things, all the things.
all the
Right
things.
now, I've been thinking about this thread and through line between what does it mean when our cultural identities kind of intersect with what's happening in the world in ways that are inconvenient, right? And
Mm,
thinking about that with Kendrick and Drake because there have been a lot of folks, Questlove included, and several respected musicians who were at first entertained by the beef between Kendrick and Drake and are now like, okay, let's wrap this up and let's talk about things that matter, like Gaza, like Palestine, like the campus protests. And
mm,
the reason I talk about identity is in the battle, Kendrick starts to levy these allegations that Drake is this
mm,
culture vulture that wears blackness as a cloak, which is complex because he's biracial, but then also there are cultural nuances that he taps into. So he's from Canada, but he'll wear a southern accent if he's on a song with a southern rapper. He has Afrobeats version, an island version, all of these different things. And I've
mhm.
always been curious, he's been very proud of his Jewish side, his black side, and I'm curious how does that play into how he may be receiving what's going on elsewhere. And then, Rick Ross is beefing with Drake, and DJ Khaled is a mutual friend of Drake and Rick Ross. Khaled is Palestinian,
There it is.
and Khaled has yet to say anything about the beef or the real war that's going on overseas. And so, to answer your question in far fewer words, I've lately been thinking about how sometimes our interests seem divergent, whether it's music
Mm.
or cultural issues or social issues. But when you really peel back the layers, there are some through lines that aren't always connected because for some of us, it's more convenient to focus on the rap beef than it is to talk about campus protests and these really sensitive topics.
Well, and I was thinking about, so much of what you have done is in the world of celebrity and in the world of news, right? And those two things sometimes intersect. They're not synonymous,
Correct.
but I mean, in our culture, sometimes they are, right? So I'm wondering, like, when you have someone, if you had DJ Khaled in front of you, or a celebrity who hasn't spoken up, but you know that's part of their identity, how do you how do you behave as a journalist in that moment? You know, how do you decide?
I think often about what the artist represents, who they are, and what they believe in, because
Mm,
there's a fine line to walk where in America we probably give too much credence to the opinions of actors, entertainers, and musicians.
sure. Yeah.
Yet those are the ones that my nieces and nephew are looking up to. And
Mhm.
what they say might matter more than, Nicole Hannah Jones, who they haven't heard of yet.
Mm.
Right.
Mhm.
And so I try to strike that balance and then working at a conglomerate like Paramount, being a host at MTV, there are also these relationships that you're balancing. And if
Yeah.
you're having a quicker interview and you want to get into this really touchy, nuanced subject, it you have to strike a balance. There's this joke that come to mind. Dave Chappelle does in his stand up. He says, the Twin Towers fell and they called Ja Rule. And he said, well, I care what Ja Rule thinks about it at a time like this. He's like, who's asking
That's
where's
a
Ja?
choice. That's a
Yeah,
choice.
when the
Yeah.
towers fall. So it's like I don't want to be that guy. But if I'm standing in front of
Right.
a rapper like JID who is incredibly intelligent, or if I could be privileged to talk to a Most Def, or if I could sit down with Andre 3000, or Kendrick Lamar, all these different people who I know have perspective.
Yeah.
That's why I'll levy those kinds of questions and really give them. And I like to give them open ended questions so that they don't think I'm trying to get a gotcha moment or that I'm trying to set them up for clickbait.
Yep.
It's no, I'm just gonna give you the runway to say what matters to you and how much you give me. That'll let me know how much I need to drill in. And then there are times when we don't want to hear from celebrities at all, and I might just say, you know what, we're gonna hold this interview
Mm.
until it feels more important in the climate of what's going on in the world, and I'll put my energies toward amplifying that rather than what this rapper said about it. You know?
Right,
Yeah,
right. Inherent in what you're saying, I hear you doing something that I really relate to, which is kind of like giving people credit for having a perspective, having multiple identities, being intelligent, having something to say. And also, if you invite someone into a space and you can sense that they don't want to go there, like, changing direction if you need to. Do
that's
you
right.
think we don't give Let's just talk about the United States. Like, do you think we don't give people enough credit for what they're capable of or what they're thinking or the perspectives they have?
In some ways, we don't give enough credit. In some ways, we give too much.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah.
I feel that we saw this with LeBron James with the shut up and dribble.
Mm,
And that was there are cases where we don't give artists who are also voters, right? Like
yeah.
he's a voter, so he has everyone who lives in this country has a stake in what's happening here and abroad. So
Mhm.
all of those opinions, even the ones that are less informed, or the ones that I don't agree with, they matter because those perspectives, those thoughts, those opinions are going to the ballot box, right? And they'll affect my
Yep.
life depending on how that person votes, right?
Yeah.
But then there are cases where I feel like we give artists and public figure where we give Americans too much credit, where we assume that we're all coming from the same set of facts, where we
Mm,
assume that it matters what this entertainer thinks about this thing. And sometimes we'll ask an artist, we want to hear more people speak out, and then when they speak out and their opinion
mm.
is uninformed, it's wait, not like that.
Yeah.
And that's when
Yeah.
we give folks too much credit. So I love the question because it's an interesting song and dance that I've had to battle. I'll give you an example actually. Doja Cat, at a time, there were conversations about her there was a controversy where she was allegedly in these internet chat rooms with racists,
Mm,
giving them fodder and having like really inappropriate conversations, etc. And
mhm.
she just so happened to be nominated for a VMA around the time that I was interviewing her. And I was going
Mm,
back and forth with my editorial director, and I said, "Yo, I mean, there are conversations about race that are happening right now, and this scandal and whatnot." And he's like, "Well, her team wants us to stand away from it. Is that a hill you want to die on? What do you want to do? What do you want to do?" And then I thought about it. I really wanted to have the conversation because for me, and if it were my platform, it'd be very interesting. But then I thought about, would we care about this in 3 years, or would we care?
yeah.
What moment do I need for her? And when we go through her legacy or archives, will this matter? And I think those conversations and her maturation and how she's discovering herself, all those things will matter. But I didn't know that that time was if I was getting the bang for my buck, right? And
Yeah.
so when
Yeah.
I think about legacy and when I think about what my interviews will mean years from now, it keeps me away from the moment. So yes, I would have gotten the clicks. Yes, it would have been interesting to me, but years from now would have been redemptive for her as a human being, and for anyone who's watching my conversations looking for greater context and want to think deeper. Is she the person for that? And so so to more pointedly answer your
Mhm.
question, I'm kind of negotiating all of that by artist, by moment, and taking their humanity and maybe even their mental well-being into account, just because I find the topic interesting. What are my listeners getting from that, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I even had the thought as I mentioned Kendrick and Drake, and then I don't know when this episode's coming out. I'm like, well, people even who cares already 48 hours later, but what about in a month, And I think that feeds into this like belief that I have of like humans have capacity, right? We can get to nuance, but we have to, I think, create things that challenge people to get to nuance, right? And
Right,
to
right.
right? So I was watching some of your, your critique and participation in conversations about music. And I thought, as I was journaling this morning, I was thinking to myself, like, when you offer critique and a perspective, how do you prepare to do it? And like, what's the process? And like, what's the responsible way, for example, to review an album? Or to, there's a lot that comes into making an album, right? Or for anything really. Like, does anything light up for you when I talk about that?
Absolutely.
Let's
The
get
first
into that.
Yeah, let's do it, let's do it. The first thing I'm thinking about when it comes to perspective and opinion, which I think we're losing a lot of with, people who are content creators and talkers first and not
Yes.
and thinkers or journalists second. I think the thing that I think about is what information can they leave with so that even if they don't agree with my opinion, they'll know that my perspective is once or whatever biases I have are upfront
Mhm,
and obvious. And two, that they at least have more information. So if they don't come to my side, they'll at least have enough knowledge to be more adequately entrenched in whatever it is that they believe. Right.
mhm,
So
mhm,
if I'm reviewing an album, I'm talking about I love to start with the context of where this artist is in their career and what I think about the artist and what I'm drawn to. So if we're talking about
mhm,
Kendrick and Drake, for example, I'm just more drawn to Kendrick Lamar. So that's my
mhm,
that's my that's my my bias there, right? And
mhm,
I'm also looking at when he's dropping records in this fast rate with this
mhm,
battle after a 5-year hiatus, everything he does seems that much larger when Drake has been nonstop, a constant in our pop cultural, consciousness. And
mhm,
so just that nuance alone will give people, fodder for, okay, is Kendrick really that dope? Or are we just happy to hear his voice because it's been 5 years since his last album or
mhm,
between his albums,
mhm,
right? And
mhm,
so I always start with context, with
mhm,
framing the opinion, and with an education so that if you're just tuning in, if you're just diving in, that the first segment of my story is always going to be contextual, it's always going to be educational, and the opinion doesn't come into the end. Because if you click off, at least you learn something. And if you hate me by the end of the video, at least you could
mm.
say I taught you a little bit of something.
Mhm. Am I picturing you, so I know I'm picturing you as you're growing up in Chicago on the Southeast Side. I know I'm picturing you listening to music. I know I'm picturing
Yes,
you
yes.
beginning to write lyrics in your early childhood, right? Am I also picturing you, like, is it fair to say, like, socializing, reading, like, what are you getting into? What are your parents observing about you as a kid?
Always been a voracious reader since a kid,
I
but it was
knew it.
like,
Yeah, you
yeah,
know,
you
of
could say,
course.
yeah,
Right.
but it was, and my dad is, he got his PhD from University of Chicago, and he came to America to work at U of C, and so books were just a constant in my household, and so I wouldn't, if I was younger, I wouldn't have told you I was a voracious reader because my sister reads so much faster than me, reads so many more books
Mm.
than me, so
Your
in
older
my
sister?
Yes, yep.
Of course.
You
Yeah,
could say
right. Yeah.
I give baby brother
Well,
vibes.
yeah.
Yes, yes. Yo, my big sister was like they everybody in my house I just felt was smarter than me. You right? So I didn't
Mm.
even think that what I was doing was interesting or unique.
Mhm.
And then you
Mhm.
go outside and you find out,
Mm.
oh, not as many people are as interested in these things as you are, right? And so
Yeah.
that's kind of always been like my you know I love reading. That's the kid that I was. But I also in the adolescence learned that the nerds don't get girls. And so I need to learn how to rap.
Until
I need to
later.
until later in life. Then it always comes back. So then it was it was chess club, but it was also hip hop that helped to help me find my interest and help me become more social. It was rap and writing poetry and raps that gave me confidence, that gave me the ability to learn how to put words together, that taught me diction and enunciation, pronunciation, all of these different things that helped me socially.
So your folks are witnessing, and it sounds like, well, I don't wanna overstate. Are they supporting that your admission was like, I wasn't as smart as everyone else in my family.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah.
That was your experience, right? And when did you realize that, like, maybe I'm a different smart?
To be fair too, my oldest sister would disagree because I'm a very good test. I have two big sisters, and I'm a very good test taker.
Aha.
Um, so the test. But as far as when I listen to them speak and how they think about things, in my opinion, they're so much more brilliant than me. But when I
Mm,
found out that, and everyone in my family is in medicine except for me. So they
mhm,
all,
mhm,
so I love how you framed it, a different kind of smart, right? So there was like,
mhm.
so the creativity, my parents didn't encourage creativity because they came here as immigrants from Ghana, West Africa, to find a better life and a future for their kids that involves something stable, not
Yep.
poetry or the arts or anything that felt like it was going to be fleeting or wasn't going to make money. So, it wasn't until I started to see success in media and TV and radio, and they go to work and they're like, "Yo, I heard your son on the radio. I saw him on TV." That they realized that what I was doing was actually working. So it wasn't really
Mhm,
until like my late 20s that my parents began to see, what I was really doing. But I was always so ardent and I just tried hard that my effort could always bring them
mm,
to my side. So even when I decided to major in business instead of chemistry in undergrad and
mhm.
major in economics, just my ability to join this student group and I would have this performance on campus and I could tell them about this thing, whether they knew what was going on or not. They just knew whatever I was doing the hell out of it. So, later on in life, they
Mm.
definitely now see where what the picture is and what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Is as you think about I often think when I'm recording these about, like, what if a teenager were to listen, and, like, what would we want to say to them? I get the sense too that you mentor a lot. Is that
Yeah,
fair to
I do. I
say?
do. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Do you feel what are you hearing from? Because I admire the hell out of teenagers. I think it's like, if you don't have a teenager in your life, get one somehow, like,
Right, right.
figure that out. Um, but what is, your invitation to someone who might be a different kind of smart,
Mm,
and kinda going through that identity discovery, you
yes,
know?
yes. Don't don't let the world take your hobbies from you, right?
Mm,
Don't let don't let the world take your hobbies from you.
mhm,
Those interests, those obscure things that we're into, they make you unique, man. I mean,
mhm.
have you ever thought about how toxic it is to ask a 7-year-old, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Right? Like you're already thinking it's a natural question because it tells you what their interests are and stuff, but it's always a vocation, right?
Mm,
And I love the
mhm.
kids who are like, they're like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And they're like, I like plants. You know what I mean? They say something that doesn't even make sense. I want to be an airplane or something. Like it's like, yo,
Yeah.
we're forcing them into the workforce. We're taking all of that innocence from them and saying that your identity and your vocation are inextricably linked. And
Mm,
if you're unable to find a vocation that is worthy of respect, then it can make you question if you as a human are worthy of respect. And I've
mhm,
actually listened to your show before where you had a great conversation with the listener who asked a question
mhm,
about moving to LA to take a job, and she was battling that very thing. And I was just listening, thinking, yes, because those kids who are differently smart or differently abled, all of those things that make you unique, even if you have to, take the cape off and put on your Clark Kent glasses when you go to work, make sure you remember where that cape is when you go home. That's
mhm,
what I would tell them. Because
mhm,
had I neglected my hobbies, I wouldn't be in the industry I'm in right now. I
mhm,
started off I was a business analyst at Target headquarters ordering office supplies. And
mhm,
at night, I would go to open mics and perform poetry and just be the artsy weirdo that I knew I wanted to be. When I
mhm,
quit that job and moved back to Chicago, all of those experiences led to where I am now, and I'm so much happier. Even before notoriety or finances came into the picture, I was just
mm, mhm,
happier. And
mhm,
so, yeah, I would tell them, hold on to those hobbies, hold on to your happy, and
mhm,
find out how those quirks and skills may be transferable and lean in.
How do you know that you're happy? Like, how do you know that
Mhm.
you're in fulfillment as a man in the world? I'm just
Yes,
like,
yes.
what are the signals for you bodily, spiritually, mentally, emotionally? And then my other question for you is like, how do you know you're starting to diverge from that?
Mm.
Because
For-
I want people to understand that
I
like
love
it's
that.
such a personal experience, but you got to know like what your levels are. You know what I
Yes, yes,
mean?
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. My happy looks like wanting to put forth effort.
Yeah.
If I'm unhappy, I know I'm
Mm,
unhappy if I no longer want to try. If
mhm.
waking up feels like a chore, if doing that one extra thing that might make whatever I'm experiencing or working on incrementally better, if I don't feel like doing that,
Mhm.
I got to check myself. That seasonal depression might be kicking in, or those that
Mhm.
anxiety might be kicking in. And it for some people it's counterintuitive. Everybody has their different thing. I remember it's something me and my partner have been going through where she was like, take breaks, like learn to take breaks.
Mm.
And I get it, but the blessing that I have is my work is fun.
Mm.
And so when I need to take a break from fun, I know that I'm probably not happy in the work. And so that
Mm.
looks different for other people whose work and fun are more divergent. But yeah, when I feel like I need to take a break from talking for a living, and like my daily breaks just aren't enough, then I know something's a little off.
Dometi and Emily will continue their conversation after a short break.
I want to spotlight YR Media, a proud member of their board of directors. And this organization empowers youth to create content all the way from journalists to young men and women who are making beats and doing production and scoring films.
And the organization is all about stirring the discourse around identity, around politics.
They're a nonprofit based in Oakland. You can find out more about them at yrmedia.org. You can listen to their podcast, and you absolutely can send them a donation.
I'm on a crusade myself of like normalizing feeling good as the goal. Like,
Yes.
and look, we all have maladaptive coping mechanisms. We could list those. I'm sure you have them. I know I have them. We know them. Uh, but do you feel good? And I think it's not about right then like how much you make and what you look like and who you know and blah 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 blah.
Yes.
It is about like it is a feeling, and we are feeling beings before we think about anything.
That's right.
So I think that in your story, I hear there was a prescription available to you. The rest of your family, not that they followed it, but that right looking around you, and you chose instead to, or you didn't choose. You were wired to kind of tune in and
Yeah,
move
yes, yes.
forward from that place,
That's right. That's right.
right?
There's a sermon that I've heard before where someone said
Mm,
happiness is often based on happenings, right?
mm,
On what's
mhm,
happening around you,
mm,
and joy is a constant feeling and emotion
mhm,
that even when happiness is fleeting, joy can be constant. And when you
mhm,
said, "How do you feel?" I think that is so that because if I wake up and I feel good
mhm.
and I have a minor annoyance. I live in New York City, which is a city of annoyances, uh, and a
Yeah.
minor annoyance comes in. Doesn't mean I'm wholly unhappy as a person. But if a minor annoyance comes in and and I can't shake it,
Mhm,
then my joy has been shaken, and I might not be as happy as I want to be in my core. So I love
mhm,
that you said that about feeling and how do you feel, and what and who you are as a person. If I know as the person that I am, if at my core, even jumping on the podcast, giving them a little peeling back the curtain, we're trying to get my mic going. I could easily jump on and just use my headphones, but and I'm using my mic and I wanted to, oh,
Yeah.
I'm happy and I'm
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah.
And when I feel like just phoning it in, yeah, that's when there's a problem. So yeah, you're so right. How about you? How do you feel your barometer? Because is it how do you
Yeah.
know when you're happy?
I know when I'm happy, this is one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you, when there's music in the background.
Mm,
So, like, if it's been quiet in the house for a few days, well, let's
that's
just
good.
say a week, right? I'm moving too fast, most likely. I'm driven by outcomes. I'm not really enjoying the day. Yesterday I had this experience. I was folding some laundry and I put on, what did I put on? I've been listening to Afro beats lately. Thanks to TikTok. Thanks to TikTok. Universal really, I know they had to do what they had to do, but it introduces me to so much music. And so I'm doing that and I'm dancing around and I'm like, this is how I know,
Yeah,
because I'm listening, like I'm open. When I get closed off and everyone, it's just like you in some ways, right? Like an interruption is an interruption. You come to my
mhm,
door and I'm like, what are you doing here?
right.
And I start to really rebuke people who are my jam. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, the edge is there. It's time to soften this edge. And usually the restorative factor for me is solitude.
Yeah,
Solitude, music, books, puttering, butterflies. You know what I mean? Like I like to move slow. I have a shirt that says I'm wired, I think it says something like I'm wired to dilly-dally, but I'm forced to move fast. Like
I
I
like
like to
that. I like
meander,
that. Yeah,
because
yeah,
I get shit done. It's the same, right? But my method
yeah.
is the way it is. So, yeah.
I love that. I love how music is a symptom for you, and
Oof.
for me, it's the
Yes.
cure. So
Yes.
if when I feel odd, I have a go to song. Umi Says by Most Def. And the chorus
Mm.
goes, my Umi, who's like his grandma, I guess, my
Mhm.
Umi says, shine your light on the world. And
Mm.
shine your light for the world to see. And something about that song is so simple. He just sings it. It's a freestyle. That puts me back in my zen when I feel like I'm
Mm.
kinda depleted. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, so, like, know what it is for you.
Yeah.
What are you I know, there's a lot on your plate. You're sort of a renaissance man in my head. You're doing a number of projects. You like it like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is my sense. Um, what do you want to share about what you're obsessed with, what's coming up, like what you want
Mhm, mhm.
for yourself?
Yeah, I didn't even introduce myself to the folks.
Hi. Yeah, hello.
Hey,
I mean,
hey.
I will introduce you in another clip, but yeah,
Oh
go
yeah,
ahead. Tell
I
us
know who's
who are
missing.
you?
I'm an
Who are
avid
you?
listener now. I am I am Dometi Pongo. Dometi means the backbone of the family. And my last name literally
Mm,
means workhorse. And that is who I
mm,
am. And what I've been working on at
yes.
Paramount, I'm at Paramount, and I work between MTV, BET, VH1, all of the brands at Paramount or Viacom, as folks used to know it. And something I worked on recently that was really cool to me, we there's a show on BET called America in Black,
Mhm,
and the clips are available on YouTube now. I did a
mhm,
segment where we interviewed three rappers who are in a different stage in their lives and careers. They're older, they've seen success, they've seen platinum records, and now they're on the what's next phase of their life. And all of them, Mia X from No Limit, contemporary Master P, Bun B from UGK, and E40 from the Bay
mm.
Area. They all have food businesses,
What?
restaurants. Yes, Bun B has a restaurant called Trill Burger in Houston, and it's
Oh,
amazing.
I've heard of Trillburger. Okay.
The hype is real. It's actually amazing.
Okay. Okay.
It's so good.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
but I did a story about what does it look like? What does life after rap look like? Even though they all
Mm,
still make music, but what does life, post
mm,
rap being your soul source, what does that look like? So I'm really excited about that. That was a recent project. And pretty soon I'm working on a 48 hours podcast based on a story in Chicago. And so I can share more later on, but it'll come
okay.
out this fall around October. Super excited about that. And I'm also executive producing a documentary.
Is this the Leaders documentary?
Yes, it is. Yes,
Oh my
it is.
gosh.
Lead Never Follow, about Leaders 1354, a really monumental, culturally relevant streetwear brand that was founded in Chicago and helped to launch the careers of Virgil Abloh, who went on to become creative director, perhaps the first Black creative director at Louis Vuitton.
Mm-hmm.
Pharrell succeeded him several years later. I think there was one more person in between there. But anyway, he started at Leaders. All of these people started working with the Leaders brand. And so we're doing a documentary about Corey Gilkey, the founder of Leaders, and everything that the store has gone through. So just telling those stories, man, it's been really exciting for me.
Can you share how much of so, you may or may not, I just realized this morning. Authenticity was like the word of the year last year.
Facts. That's
Merriam-Webster.
funny.
Fine. And I'm thinking about like what what is the risk and the reward of being authentic as a journalist? In other words, like you get to talk to a lot of celebrities, right? And I'm sure that that has puts a certain shine on you. Um, so what's the secret to being shiny? Like, go ahead, and staying, the kid who's reading books. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, yes. Let me think about that one.
Hmm.
I'll answer the first half first, the risk and the reward of being authentic.
Great.
The risk of being authentic is if your true self doesn't fit the norm, the industry norm, you can ostracize yourself. You can make yourself seem less credible. If you speak in an accent that isn't the Midwestern nondescript news accent, if like there's a
Yeah.
certain there's a certain ethos that just works, and there are reasons it works, right? Like I think
Mhm.
in America, if you're from a certain region, you hear a different accent, you just receive information differently. There are
Mhm.
a lot of things, a lot of risks, but the risk of being inauthentic outweighs those
Mm.
risks of authenticity. If you are successful as someone other than yourself, then you have to keep that up for the rest
Oof.
of your life. And that is a hard weight to bear. That's
Yeah.
heavy. And you're robbing the world of the very thing that God gave you that was your superpower. When I first started in the radio, my first gig thought about changing my name. Fast forward
Mm.
several years later, one of my first stories for VH1 was a two-part series where cast members of a reality show had DNA tests done to find out where they were from culturally
Huh.
and which African tribes and which African countries they were from. If I
Mm.
was not Dometi Pongo, I wouldn't have gotten that gig. And so
Mm.
I almost cut off my own superpower,
Wow.
right?
Mhm.
So that the authenticity you want to, I'd rather risk failing as myself than being successful as anyone else. And
Yeah.
to the second part of your question, how do you maintain that shine and that veneer as a person on these carpets?
Mhm.
For me, you call me a fashionista, which I appreciate.
You
But
are.
for me, thank you. For me, it's fashion. That is always
Yeah.
that's the thing. When I first started working with stylists who helped me pick pieces, they're like, "What do you want to communicate with your wardrobe? What do you want to say?
Mhm.
Like, who are you?"
Mm.
So that
Mhm.
when I'm on that carpet and I only have 15 seconds to get my question out, my clothing needs to speak for me. And I saw
Mhm.
a crazy
Mm.
difference between my first red carpet and my recent red carpets and how artists respond to me. Because
Yeah.
the earlier ones, I had on, I just wore a suit or I had on regular clothes. As I became more comfortable in expressing myself fully, the first compliment is always a comment on what I'm wearing.
Right.
And then that's the icebreaker. Or they already know, oh, this interview might be a little different. Or this guy got some energy to him. He got a little swag to him. And
Yeah.
I used to want to stifle that part of myself because, again, going back to risk and reward,
Mm.
the more conventional news anchors might see me as too flashy or too boisterous or too different from who they are, too verbose, too much, just too much,
Too much.
but
Yes.
for the artists and the people I'm talking to is just enough, you know.
Yeah, take the risk to be yourself and be expressed, right? And if that is wearing a suit and you're a reporter, like, okay, be that. But to hold back is exhausting.
It's exhausting. It's exhausting, and know what works for you, and stay, and going back to putting a button on those earlier conversations that I think you posed the question so beautifully. Uh, those divergent skills and hobbies, all of those interests, own those, and love those. And if you're somebody who, yes, naturally fits into a typical mold, and everybody else is loud and doing their thing, um, don't do that either. Be you, because the pendulum will always swing your way. And if you are have a certain aesthetic, there's somebody like you waiting on you to succeed, to give them the confidence to do the same.
Hmm. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
After listening to that episode, don't you feel like the only question you have is like, so where are we going next? It will not surprise you as a result of that feeling, right? Dometi is a great follow on Instagram. You can find him there. You know the drill. Do not keep this conversation to yourself. I personally suggested sharing with someone who is on the social justice path and could use a boost. I think Dometi's conversation is exactly what they need to hear. Thanks for listening. I want to keep talking to you. Where are we going? I heard there's a place in New York you can walk to a window and they'll give you gazpacho, the cold
Yes,
soup,
yes, yes.
like in a cup, and you can just drink your soup and keep walking. And I'm like, man, I want to go do that with Dometi.
Oh
Like,
my
that'd be
God.
so
Oh,
fun.
that would be, let's make it a date. We've got to
Wouldn't
do
it be?
that.
It'd be so
That
great.
would be amazing.